All right, you ready?
Jeez. Yeah. Okay.
We'll start with the Death Day film.
Okay. If you insist.
Oh, excuse me.
That's our beginning announcement there.
That was good.
Beginning bell.
Mm-hmm. Welcome to Unspooled. Today we are launching our new podcast, Unspooled, previously known as the Glide Film Show, renamed for a slightly better name than the Glide Film Show. We're still going to do the same things we have been doing, but we're moving our dual reviews to Fridays instead of Wednesdays, just as a little, I don't know, it makes a little more sense to me, but not really. It's a little better, I think, on a Friday than a Wednesday. So today is a dual review episode. We are not doing the traditional dual review thing. Dual reviews traditionally will be every other Friday, where we will do 2 movie reviews, 1 movie connecting in some loose or very tight way to a film released the previous week, and then the second movie connecting in some way to a film released on the day of the dual review episode. So today we're not doing that, as we didn't quite have time to prepare for that. So instead, we're going to do 2 newish films that have been released somewhat recently. Not terribly recently, but within the last month or so. So we're going to start with Happy Death Day, which is directed by Christopher Landon, starring Jessica Rothe and Israel Broussard. So this movie, it's okay. We'll start there. So the general premise of it, basically, is that the main character, Tree, which that is actually her name, is Tree in this movie.
Yes.
Which is played by Jessica Rothe, who is phenomenal in this film. But the basic premise is she wakes up on her birthday and gets murdered. And then she wakes up again on her birthday again and relives the same day over and over and over. So it's like Groundhog Day, but instead of whatever the explanation was in there, is she gets murdered every time. And so she has to figure out who murders her, and she has to stop her own murder to get out of this time loop that she's been stuck in, is the general premise of the movie.
Okay.
So the first half of this movie is a bit different from the second half. The first half plays like your typical slasher film. You know, like your standard Friday the 13th, really not something of that quality, but something more like your, your standard slasher film, your Screams, that kind of stuff, except not quite as funny as Scream. But anyway, it plays like that, your typical slasher film, and then it turns around the middle point of the movie. It kind of realizes the possibilities of its own premise. And so then we start getting all of this fun experimentation that Tree's doing just to see what she can do in this time loop. She starts pointing out to the people that something bad's going to happen to her. She's walking by them to warn them in advance. One time she decides to walk around naked for some reason. I'm not really sure why, but she does for some reason. Sure. But she does. And that part of the film is really good. The slasher part by itself is not terrible, not the best executed slasher film out there by any means.
No.
The second half of it is much better executed. We get into this character drama and character study of Tree as a human being, which is remotely engaging. It's not the worst character study I've seen done, but it's not great. But all in all, the film is very uneven with that mismatched tone. You'll get a scene that's very lighthearted and fun, and then you'll get her getting murdered in a non-fun way. They do have like some fun, inventive setups for her murders, which are pretty interesting. This film is a lot more lighthearted than I expected it to be. That's for sure. I'll at least give it that. It's not what I expected it was going to be. I'll give it that. And overall, the plot is pretty simple, although the ending makes you kind of go, does this really make sense? Okay, I guess, sure, that'll work. The ending's one of those that it's somewhat unexpected, but the way they take it makes you go, I'm not even sure if that's possible, but
Right.
okay, I'll believe it just so I don't sit here and think about Happy Death Day for 30 minutes. So, okay, fine.
Yes.
So all in all, a solid, but nothing revolutionary or spectacular in terms of a film. Although I will say that Jessica Roth is phenomenal in this film. And, she's relatively unknown. She was in La La Land last year, which, as anyone who's listened to the show for a while knows, I loved that film last year. So, her, I don't really remember what her part in the movie was, but she was in it, apparently, according to her IMDb page.
Yes.
So, she's been in, a great film last year. She's in this starring role and delivers greatly in this. I could see her getting bigger roles out of this performance. We'll see if she can get out of being typecast into horror films after this. She might be one of those people now, which is fine. So all in all, solid but unspectacular, but a very enjoyable, fun, lighthearted horror movie. If you're not the kind who wants to go see your more heavy, gore-filled horror romps, Jigsaw and the like, this is a very nice, lighthearted, but still packs some minor scares horror film. So all in all, I gave this a 73% rating. So one of the lower ratings I've given this year so far, but not one of my higher ratings, of course. I did like this more than that Annabelle movie we saw a while back, though.
Okay.
So
yes.
For some context there.
Okay. Well, I have about the same thoughts as you did. I gave it a 74, so that's close. Jessica, she's good. She's good in the role. Israeli, I think that's how you pronounce his name.
Okay.
Israel.
I would assume it's Israel, but I don't
Israel.
I don't know for sure.
I think he's really good in this movie. He plays, I want to say her boyfriend part, but he's not really her boyfriend till the end.
Yeah.
His part, I think he does really good in his part. This I read somewhere, and I just have a hard time believing this, that this was filmed in New Orleans on a $5 million budget. So this movie, there's no special effects per se.
Right. No, it does have a low budget feel to it,
but for
like
$5 million, that's
classic horror films do. So
it's pretty good for a $5 million budget. And I understand how, the first time you wake up in a day, you're going to do the day normal. So that's like the movie. Then the second time you wake up and like, wait, this seems kind of familiar, and go through the whole day like, this happened before. So I think they did the movie, and then the 15th time it's like, okay, it's time to start having fun with this thing. Okay. Hey people, the sprinklers are going to come on here in 2 seconds. Sure. So to me that was very realistic in that way. definitely, I think it has a good pace. Uh, a good pace. It doesn't get bogged down, too much or too often. Um, and the movie is a little over 90 minutes long, and to me that was just perfect because they could have kept it going for 3 hours. Okay, let's figure out another way for her to die or get killed. And no, oh my gosh, it would have been way too long then. But 90 minutes is perfect for this movie. Uh, so, I don't have much else to add than that. Uh, Except, the ending that the killer, yeah, you think about that after a while, like, okay, does it really make sense that that's the killer? And I'm not giving away who it is.
Right.
Is that really? Does that go back through and okay on her first death? Okay, the second death. Okay, I can't go through every death she had.
Right.
But sometimes I wonder if it is actually good that the killer was the killer. Um, so overall, a pretty decent movie, but nothing fantastic, nothing new per se. But it's a decent, decent remake or a decent retelling of the Groundhog Day kind of movie.
Now, the one thing I will say, though, that could make this film more clever than I think it means to be is because they set up that it's one person that's been murdering her the whole time.
Yes.
And then they go, no, it's this other person who you have no reason to suspect it is.
Correct.
Well, you see, the clever way they could take that is that it was both of them, that sometimes it was this first person that killed her, and other times it was this other person that killed her. But I don't think that's what that's the way they took it
Right.
unintentionally
Oh,
or intentionally. They could have taken it that way, but I don't think they tried to.
They could have done that easily.
They could have.
Yes.
So now, like our traditional movie reviews with older films, we are going to go through box office numbers and whatnot for this one too right now.
Okay.
So, currently this film, I didn't look up the budget, but you said about $5 million, so that's fine. Currently, as of yesterday, October 26th, the film has grossed $56 million worldwide, so a nice profit there for the studio, for Universal. A nice profit for Universal right there. How's this film doing critically? Well, among other critics, professional and amateur alike, this currently holds a 69% on Rotten Tomatoes, so a bit lower than both of us overall, but that's probably from a lot of people who didn't like it or people who did. Audience-wise, is 69% from audiences as well on this film. So, generally, in line with what we felt. Solid but unspectacular, but not a horrible option to check out. I gotta get to Blade Runner. Okay. So now we'll move on to our second film of the day to review here. That is Blade Runner 2049, directed by Denis Villeneuve and starring Ryan Gosling, Harrison Ford, and Jared Leto as well. Now, you go first here, because I got to figure out how I'm going to phrase all my comments.
Okay. This movie is a sequel to the Blade Runner of 35 years ago or so.
The 80s, sometime in there, yeah.
It's a sequel, and honestly, it does very well as a sequel. This movie also stars, I'll say, Robin Wright, and I remember her very well from Forrest Gump. She played Jenny. And I recognized this guy when he was on the screen, but I just could not think of who he was and stuff. But It also stars Dave Bautista
Oh, right.
from the
wrestler.
WWE, the wrestler, and his part was pretty short, but it was like, well, I know that person. Who? Okay, so now he's into acting, apparently.
Well, he was in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
Yes, I mean,
well, so
I thought, wow, okay, pretty cool. But anyway, this movie is 30 years after the first film's events. It's a new type of Blade Runner. Ryan Gosling plays the new type.
Well, that's what we presume.
Well,
there is still a possibility, not so much.
Right, but that's what I'm saying now. That, when you're watching the movie, he's the new type of Blade Runner. He discovers this long lost, buried secret, that has the potential to send the rest of society in chaos. Okay, now to me, that plot line, that storyline is very thin. I'm sorry. And they based the whole movie on that little plot line there. And it's a little thin to me. Okay, but and this new find of his leads him on a quest to find Rick Deckard, and we all know him, Harrison Ford from the first movie, and he's been missing for the last 30 years. So that's your plot line and stuff. I think this is it's a solid movie, and don't ask me how, because I never thought anyone could have a sequel that did this, but it does justice to the first movie. And maybe it took them 30 years to figure out how to do a sequel, but it actually does justice to the first movie. The visuals are stunning. It's definitely a visual movie. The acting isn't perfect. Robin Wright, her part, she just didn't feel right in that part, but she was okay. Sylvia Hooks, I think that's how you pronounce her last name. I think she's very good in the movie. She's the one that actually kills Robin Wright. Well, oops, I shouldn't give that away.
Oh, okay.
She plays
that's her. Okay.
I'm not quite sure what to call her part. She's
Jared Leto's assistant, essentially. That's her role in the movie. If you recall Rachel from the first movie, she's basically the Rachel of this movie.
Okay, yeah.
For the most part.
And I think she was very good. I liked her. So, to me, the movie, it moves at a slow pace. That hence the 2.5 hour playing time.
240. But yeah,
But and this is the part. Even though it is slow pace, it doesn't seem like it's that long or that slow. So that's a good sign. But to me, it is a bit too long movie. I think if they shaved the correct 15 to 20 minutes off, I would give it a much higher score. The action, of course, was it's very minimal action. It's, there's not much in the way of action per se. But from the opening scene, we just know that this movie, it's going to be a visual feast. My eyes were looking, instead of always at the center of the screen, it was like, boy, check out that thing on the left edge of the screen. And wow, it was just so visual that it's, I think it's almost an IMAX requirement to see this movie on. And there's there's a few plot points that they leave hanging, I think, for possible sequels. Will there be any? From what I read, there's a possible that there's a sequel. I gave this movie an 87, so that's pretty good.
For you, yeah.
87. And I also read somewhere, and I don't know this to be true, so someone else would have to help me out on this, and I will look for this, but somebody said that there's 3 short films made that actually tie in the first movie and this movie. In the middle there, the 30 years that they're missing, there's 3 short films somewhere.
Right. I've heard about that. I haven't bothered to look for those either, but
Okay.
because if you don't, like, they do give a opening text page that you read that tells you essentially what's happened between the movies, which, honestly isn't terribly important, but,
It's not terribly important. No.
they let you know what's happened.
But, just for information, basically.
Which is essentially Tyrell Corp died, and the world was like on the edge of starvation, basically. So this Wallace dude, which is Jared Leto's character, has found a way to farm properly, and then also he bought the rest of Tyrell Corp and has taken over production of replicants and has made replicants to the point where they don't have the violent issues the previous lines of replicants had from the first film. That's essentially what's happened between the two.
Okay, well, that's my review of it.
All right.
It's a pretty good movie. It's probably worth seeing more than once. But the length of the movie, I think, is going to keep it from being a box office superstar.
So, once again, with Blade Runner 2049 here, Denis has made another masterwork of a film. Now, he's done that a lot over the last decade, roughly, whether it be Incendie, whether it be Sicario, Prisoners, Enemy, Arrival, all terrific, incredible films. This one not quite as great as some of those others, but this film still is an absolute masterwork from a cinematography standpoint. Thanks largely to getting Roger Deakins as your cinematographer, that's going to make your film look just absolutely incredible, no matter what it is. I mean, that's just what Deakins does at this point. So,
okay. Well, he did a good job.
He sure did on this film. And this is a film that isn't really just a movie that you watch. This is one of those that is going to be an experience for people to see this film, to envelop themselves in the cinematography and in the set design, and in the characters and the story, not quite as much. This film is very true to the original film in that it is very slow, and the characters aren't all that great or terribly interesting, but that the film still engages you regardless of that. This film also, true to the original, has a lead actor that gives a less than stellar performance, but overcomes that challenge. Now, granted, Gosling is much better than Harrison Ford was in the original, if you're asking me, but that's just my opinion on the matter. Now, this is a film that does give itself there are some built-in challenges when you're making this. You're making not only a sequel to the original Blade Runner film, but you're in theory making a sequel to Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. So, in both ways, you have to completely make up basically everything, because none of this is covered in the book or the original film in any way whatsoever.
Right.
Now, I will say the one thing Denis has done with this movie is that it isn't a requisite that you've seen the first one to get this one.
That is correct.
Now, it helps, obviously, with some of the stuff to understand the impact of it, but it's not a requisite to get this film whatsoever.
No.
But this film does absolutely build upon the original in ways that a lot of sequels aren't going to do. It gives you something to actually, after you watch this movie, it gives you something to go back and watch the first one for and go, okay, that's where this comes from. Oh, okay. And it gives you a deeper understanding of both films which is an achievement of itself. This is, as was the original, a film that isn't so much built upon its writing and its dialogue, but built upon its visuals. And how it's going to tell its story is a lot of visual storytelling, not a ton of dialogue storytelling. There is still a great deal of that, of course, as pretty much most films are going to do that aren't silent ones. So this film is going to be a film that I think is going to be studied in film schools. There have been a few of those released this year that I think are destined to that. This one, Dunkirk, Mother, all three are probably going to end up in film school curriculum in some way, I have a feeling. But this one is going to do something that I think those two films won't do. And that is that this is also going to tap into the more casual film fan, and the younger film fans who watch this movie are going to go, this is incredible. I want to do this in a way that, like Dunkirk or Mother or something like that, just isn't going to do. This is a film that is going to, and has, at least as far as I've seen and heard from other people, is going to make people want to make films and is going to really enthrall audiences for years, if not decades, to come. And all in all, this film, the cast is largely terrific in the film. The directing is tremendous from Denis, as you would expect at this point, that he's going to be top-notch of his game, as he is all the time. And all in all, the set design, beautiful, stunning to look at. The cinematography, stunning to look at.
Yes.
The plot itself, what you said about how they're following a very thin plot point, basically, for the whole movie, I don't really think that's the case. I can't really explain why not, or I'll give away most of the first hour of the movie.
Okay.
But the general plot point, the general premise of the film is a very interesting one, because it brings into question a lot of things about, well, what makes a human, what makes a robot, and what is the difference between the two, which is what the first one did and what the book did even better than the original movie. But this film also takes a stunning detour from the first movie, because the first movie, at its core, is a noir film set in a sci-fi-ish universe. That's what Blade Runner is. This one takes it differently. This is not a film noir by any means. This is more along your standard sci-fi route, but it does still have noir elements in it, which is what makes it so interesting to watch and see unfold. Whereas the first film, as I said, is a noir film with sci-fi elements. This is a sci-fi film with noir elements in it, which is a very big detour.
Okay.
Now, all in all, this does also leave, as you said, the door open for sequels, potentially. It's not forced with some stupid cliffhanger ending or anything like that.
That is correct.
They do leave things that there is the possibility that, if we want to, we can make a sequel to this film, but we're not forcing it to be done like studios have done with, like, Independence Day 2 from last year was like that. And a bunch of films do that, especially when they know we're getting sequels. We're going to set up the sequel with our ending and not really bother resolving this one. We're just going to set up the next one. This film does not do that in any way, except for one slight thing where it's like, yeah, hey, this thing is going to happen. We may or may not ever show you it, but hey, this is going to happen. So, other than that, there's nothing like that in this film. And this is a film that is really going to satisfy both two kinds of people. It's going to satisfy your more standard movie-going audience that just wants to go in, sit down, have their popcorn, and have a nice, fun experience at the movies. This is going to do that. And on the other aspect, you have the more, so that'd be more along like your lines of moviegoers. And then you have the more along my line who want to go in and not just have a fun time there, but also have a engaging and compelling story told to them, to just take in a bunch of just super interesting sets and great cinematography and really explore the ideas of this film and explore the different filmmaking elements that are used, whether that be visual storytelling, whether that be, which is more visual storytelling, but storytelling through your set design, through your cinematography, and not relying heavily upon writing down every single ounce of detail into your script for characters to recite.
Right. Okay.
So this film is going to satisfy both those kind of people, your more general audience and your more artsy film buff type folk. This is going to satisfy both groups. So I ended up giving this film a 95%, my second highest rating of the year. My highest rating I've given out on this show, though, to a film from this year. So a 95 for Blade Runner 2049. How's it faring at the box office? Well, as of yesterday, October 26th, currently sitting at about $197 million worldwide on a $150 million budget. How's it faring critically? Among other critics, it holds an 88% at the moment and an 81% from audiences. So not quite as high as we were on it, but that's fine. All in all,
okay.
A terrific, almost mandatory film to at least view. I don't think IMAX is necessary for this film, but it wouldn't hurt, this isn't quite a mandatory IMAX like Dunkirk was, but this is still an incredible visual film. So that is going to do it for this episode of Unspooled. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more great content. And until the next episode, goodbye.